Tonight, you will put your baby down and walk out of the room. Maybe you will check the monitor. Maybe you will stand in the doorway for a moment. Then you will go, and the baby will be alone. For 99% of human history, that moment would have been unthinkable. Not because ancient parents were more devoted, because a baby left alone was a baby that died. Not eventually that night. This is the story of what they did instead. And when you hear it, something about the exhaustion and the loneliness and the impossibility of modern parenting will finally make sense. Start with the problem, because the problem is biological and it is brutal. A newborn foal stands and walks within hours of birth. A newborn chimpanzee grips its mother's fur from the first minute and holds on. It can cling, it can travel, it can hide. A newborn human can do none of these things. It cannot hold up its own head. It cannot move toward warmth. It cannot silence itself when danger is close. Of all the creatures on this planet, human babies are born the most unfinished. Not slightly unfinished, catastrophically unfinished. The reason is the brain. The human brain is so large that if it reached full size before birth, it would never pass through the birth canal. So, evolution made a deal. Human babies are born with brains, roughly 25% complete. The rest grows after birth, outside the womb. In the open world, while the baby is completely unable to protect itself or help itself in any way, this is not a mistake. It is a trade. We got the most powerful mind on the planet. The price was the most helpless infant on the planet. And for 300,000 years, every mother who gave birth knew what that price meant. A baby that could not cling, a baby that could not run, a baby that could not stay quiet when something in the dark was getting closer. In a world of leopards and hyenas and snakes, that could track a newborn's scent from a quarter-mile away. That baby was not just vulnerable, it was bait. So how did any of them survive? The answer is something modern parents have almost entirely lost. Ancient humans did not raise children, they raised children together. In 2009, anthropologist Sarah Blaffer, HRD published research that reframed the entire story of human evolution. Her argument was this: chimpanzees raise their offspring alone. A chimpanzee mother carries, nurses, and protects her infant by herself for 5 years before she can have another. She allows no one else to touch the baby. She trusts no one. This works for chimpanzees because a chimpanzee infant can hold on, it can cling, it can keep up. A human infant cannot do any of that, and a human mother cannot do everything alone. So we became something different. Biologists call it cooperative breeding. Humans evolved to raise children as a group, not as a preference. As a survival requirement, without other people sharing the weight, the cost of growing a human brain inside a helpless body would have killed us as a species long before we had a chance to become one. Among the EFE foragers of the Congo rainforest, researchers documented something that stops most modern parents cold. A newborn infant is held by an average of 14 different people across a single 8-hour period. The mother holds the baby less than half the time. The other 60% of the day that baby is in someone else's arms. Aunts, older siblings, grandmothers, neighbors, women with no biological connection to the child at all. Some of them breastfeed the baby themselves. 14 people, 8 hours, one infant. And there was a reason every one of those arms mattered. When early humans became upright, they lost the body hair that primate infants used to grip their mothers. A chimpanzee baby hangs on. A human baby has nothing to hold, so someone had to hold them instead. Every hour, every day, for years, a baby on the ground was a dead baby. They fashioned carriers from animal hide and woven plant fiber. Archaeologists found evidence of this at a burial site in Italy, 10,000 years old. An infant named Neve, buried with what researchers believe was a decorated baby carrier, the oldest parenting technology we have ever found. Not a weapon, not a tool for hunting or farming, a way to keep a baby close. And here is something that should shift the way you think about your own infant. When you pick up a screaming newborn and hold it against your chest, and it suddenly goes silent, most parents think that is comfort. It is not comfort. It is an ancient predator evasion reflex. Scientists call it the transport response. When a baby feels itself lifted and carried, its heart rate drops, its breathing slows, its crying stops, because in the ancient world, a crying baby attracted predators. A baby that went quiet the moment it was held was a baby that did not get you both killed. That reflex is still running inside your child right now. It is 300,000 years old, and it still works. Feeding was its own survival system. Mothers and hunter-gatherer groups breastfed for a minimum of 2 to 3 years, often 4, not as a philosophy. As the only option available, there was no formula, no safe water for an infant. Breast milk was the only sterile, complete food a baby could receive. It also carried antibodies that fought infections in a world with no medicine of any kind, and it suppressed ovulation. A mother nursing constantly would not get pregnant again for years. Because two helpless infants at once in the Paleolithic was a sentence most families could not survive. When the baby needed something more than milk, there was no soft food in a jar. There was premastication. The mother, or the grandmother, or whoever was holding the baby that moment, would chew a piece of meat or a tough root until it was soft and broken down by their saliva, then press it from their own mouth directly into the baby's mouth. Lip to lip, digestive enzymes and immune cells carried straight from one body into the other. Some anthropologists now believe this is the evolutionary origin of human kissing, not romance. A mother feeding her child the only way she knew how. And then there were the grandmothers. This is the part of the story that changes everything. Most animals die shortly after they stop being able to reproduce. There is no biological reason to keep a body running once it can no longer pass on genes, but human women live for decades. After menopause, decades. No other primate does this. For a long time, scientists had no explanation. In 1997, anthropologist Kristen Hawkes studied the Hadza of Tanzania, one of the last living hunter-gatherer groups on Earth. She found that post-menopausal women were among the hardest-working members of the entire group. They foraged longer hours than anyone. They dug the toughest tubers from the hardest ground. They collected food that young children could never reach on their own, and they fed their grandchildren directly every day. This meant something enormous. A mother with a grandmother actively feeding her last child could have another baby sooner. The grandmother was not retired. She was the system. She was the reason the next generation existed at all. Hawkes called it the grandmother hypothesis. The reason human women outlive their fertility is because grandmothers who helped raise grandchildren passed on more genes than grandmothers who did not. Your long life exists because 300,000 years ago, an old woman digging roots in the African heat was the difference between a child eating and a child starving. Menopause is not a breakdown. It is a strategy. One of the most successful biological strategies our species ever produced. And here's the part that should land differently. Now, for 300,000 years, no human being raised a child alone. Not one, not ever. It was always a group. Always a network of hands. Always someone who could take the baby when the mother could no longer hold her eyes open. The average hunter-gatherer mother had somewhere between 5 and 15 people actively helping her raise each child every single day. In most industrialized countries today, that number is 2. Often 1. You are sitting in an apartment at 3 in the morning with a screaming infant and no one is coming. No grandmother down the path. No aunt in the next shelter. No neighbor who will hold your baby for an hour while you sleep. The exhaustion you feel is not weakness. The loneliness you feel is not failure. It is the result of asking 1 or 2 people to do what your body was never once, in 300,000 years of evolution, designed to do alone. For the entire history of our species, the question was never whether one person could raise a child. The answer to that was always no. The question was whether enough people around that child cared enough to keep it alive. For 300,000 years, enough people always did. That is the only reason any of us are here.